Hi, welcome to Decoding Confidence. I'm your host, Advita Patel, a confidence and influence coach. And over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to be digging into what confidence actually looks like in the workplace. Not the fake it till you make it stuff, but the real deal. So go and grab your drink, coffee, tea, and let's decode this confidence thing together. Enjoy this episode. Today, we are talking about one of my favorite habits, and that is energy. Now, energy is a topic that isn't discussed as much as it should be in the workplace. And if I'm being brutally honest with you right now, it's something that people think it's just going to happen to them if they just have a couple of hours rest or a weekend away. You may even find yourself behaving in this way yourself when you're exhausted. You may be saying things like, oh, it's okay, I've got a holiday coming up, or I've got a weekend coming up. And we're kind of looking forward to that 5 o'clock on a Friday so we can rest and recuperate. That isn't how energy works. And energy is something that not only impacts how we show up for ourselves on a day-to-day basis, but it also impacts on how we show up in ourselves and our self-belief and confidence. I have coached over 150 leaders over the last 5 years, and through their mistakes and my own painful mistakes myself, I've realized that without energy, every other leadership habit that I've spoken about so far becomes virtually impossible. You can't be bold when you're exhausted. Your empathy depletes when you're really tired. Your learning also slows down and it doesn't take priority. And your vulnerability can start wavering when your energy isn't where it needs it to be. Energy is the foundation that makes everything possible. So it's really important that we pay attention to it. So if you've ever felt that you're running on empty and you can't slow down, or you've convinced yourself that exhaustion means dedication, then what I'm going to share with you in this episode is 100% for you. Because protecting your energy isn't selfish, and it's definitely not a nice to have either. It is a core leadership skill that determines whether you thrive or you're just surviving. And it's something that we need to pay real attention to. So let's dig in. In this episode, I'm going to share some stories, some research, and some top tips with you. So hopefully, as soon as you finish listening, you can take away some immediate actions to help you with your energy habit. Before I get into all this, let me tell you my own story about when everything changed for me when it came to energy. I used to convince myself that I was a night owl. Like, how many of us have said that? I'm a night owl. I do my best work at night. So I used to stay up like until 1 o'clock in the morning, like glued to my laptop, replying to emails, doing work, telling myself that this is how I prove my dedication to the people that I work with and the organizations that I'm supporting. And I would also convince myself that my manager would go, wow, she's so committed. Look how hard she's working, and it'll pay off. The thing is, it didn't pay off. It really didn't pay off for me. It actually just demonstrated somebody who couldn't switch off. And worse, I think at that time, I was actually modeling burnout as a normal thing that we just have to do if we want to succeed in the work that we're doing. And the things like hustle cultures and burning candles at both ends and all that stuff doesn't help. I used to wake up every morning exhausted and really tired, and my confidence was really low. My self-esteem wasn't where I needed to be. And I realized at that time that I wasn't leading from energy at all. I was actually leading from being almost empty. And that's when everything starts to break down, and that's when suffering starts happening, and your decisions become a bit cloudy, and your presence is a bit scattered, and you can't think, and you get things like decision fatigue. It's just a really tough place to be in. And that was what I would say my wake-up call. Because I realized that I can't function in that way. If I'm not like energized in everything that I'm doing, then I can't be my best self and help other people be their best self. And when I surveyed 507 professionals for my book, half of them in that survey said that maintaining energy and positivity, even when they were under pressure, is a hallmark of a confident leader. And when I asked what helps them feel more confident day to day, majority came back and said taking time to rest and recharge and setting clearer boundaries. Those were the two actions that topped that list. But the problem, and we know this, we know everything I've shared with you is not brand new. We know this intellectually. But the problem is that we just don't do it. For multitude of reasons, we just don't take the time to understand and recognize what energy means for us. I'm going to tell you a story about one of my coachees, and I'm going to call her Francine for the purpose of this story. When Francine first came and approached me to do coaching with her, in our first coaching session, she genuinely looked like she was carrying the weight of the entire world on her shoulders. She told me that she'd been recently promoted and she was desperate to prove that she deserved the role because she got that role against a few of her peers who now reported into her. She told me that she worked past 8 o'clock most nights. She always checked her emails before bed, and she powered her days mostly on energy drinks and coffee. And she goes, I know I need to rest. And she said, I know that I need to make time for myself, but there's always something urgent. And I think if I stop and I just take a break, what if the leaders think that they're giving the wrong person the job and I can't handle it? Now, Francine is what I would say had fallen into the confidence trap. She genuinely believed that exhaustion and demonstrating exhaustion equaled dedication, and that being constantly available at work proved her worth and value. But the harder she pushed, the less confident she actually felt. Does that sound familiar to you? It definitely sounded familiar to me when she was sharing this story with me. So within weeks, we were working together and something started to shift in Francine's. And one thing that I have to say to you is that we didn't focus or work on time management or productivity hacks. That wasn't Francine's problem. Instead, we focused on reclaiming her energy. So we experimented with things like boundaries. We created things like wind down routines. And most importantly, we redefined what success looked like for her, which at the time she was like being available 24/7, to making sure that she had clear, calm and intentional behaviors that demonstrated her value and also showed her that she was worthy of having that promotion. And the results were actually fairly immediate. Her sleep improved, her thinking became much clearer. Even the way she presented herself to me on screen, her body language was so different. And the best thing about all of this is that her leaders and her team noticed as well. And they started to open up to her a little bit more because they realized actually we can still be really successful without having to kind of burn ourselves out. And she started to demonstrate that if her team don't take ownership for their own energy, then things are not going to go in the way they needed to go. So she used to just tell them, go and take a few minutes or have Friday off because you work really late on Monday and Tuesday. And she led by example. And energy stuff isn't just about feeling tired, by the way. Without getting too sciencey on this podcast, because I do dig a bit deeper into my book and I'm also going to do a blog about this so you can understand it a little bit better. Let's talk about what happens to our brain when our energy drops, because this was like, honestly, mind-blowing for me when I first researched and read it. So energy, I always say to all my coaches and people that I work with, that energy needs to be treated like a currency. It's foundational to how we think, how we decide things, how we lead, especially when the pressure is on. And many of us do, unfortunately, work in quite a pressurized environment nowadays. But neuroscience shows that when our energy reserves drop, whether that's mental, emotional, or physical, our cognitive performance takes a bit of a direct hit. So tasks like problem solving, strategic thinking, emotional regulation, those things become much harder for us to manage. This is largely thanks to our prefrontal cortex, your brain's command center. And it's responsible for things like planning, reasoning, impulse control, and navigating complex kind of decisions. When you've had enough rest, our brain behaves like a smart, capable leader, CEO. So it helps us think a bit clearly, we're a bit more strategic, and we're balanced in the decisions that we're making. But when we are exhausted and we're juggling loads of different priorities, our brain can feel like an overworked, like an overworked intern who's trying to hold everything together on lots and lots of coffee and energy drinks while managing the chaos around them. It can feel a bit frantic and a bit chaotic. Daniel Kahneman talks about this in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. He describes two systems that shape how we think and make decisions. Now, these are not scientific terms, by the way. These are terms that Daniel himself has defined to help us think how our brain works. So system one is that automatic intuitive brain. It helps us make decisions quickly but efficiently, but it can also lead to lots of errors because it relies a lot on shortcuts and assumptions. And our biases as well, to be fair. Our system two brain is much slower and more deliberate. And it engages when we pause to analyze questions or solve something that's a bit unfamiliar. And it helps us slow down our decisions. This is where clearer, more rational decisions are made. The challenge is that we spend most of our time in system one mode. So when we're tired, exhausted, drained of energy, we even make more errors, which is so critical why energy is a core part of our leadership skill. And when we make these errors, it can knock our confidence and self-esteem. Of course it will. So we end up doing things like maybe snapping at colleagues instead of actually listening to what they say. We're defaulting to things like, this is just how we've always done it. And we don't have the bandwidth or the headspace to think differently about different ways of doing things. And we end up saying yes to things that we later regret as well, because we don't have the energy to come up with a good reason on why to say no. And for me, this was my big thing, which was procrastinating on tough decisions because we're so worried about getting them wrong, because we're just tired and we can't think properly. Now I want us to talk about what happens when stress hijacks our energy. This is a conversation I've been having a lot over probably the last few years, to be honest, actually for a long time, I would say. A lot of people are going through high levels of stress right now. You know, there's lots going on in the workplace. There's lots going on in personal lives. There's lots going on in the world. And as human beings, we're not meant to be switched on 24/7. In the years before technology came into our lives, we used to go into the office, do our work, go home, and that was it. We genuinely switched off because there's no other way for anyone to contact us about anything unless they came to our front door, knocked on the door and asked us to have a conversation. And that wasn't going to be happening. And even things like news and updates and what's going on in people's lives, you generally found out either watching one of the 4 news channels that were around at that time, or if a letter popped into your letterbox, from wherever, and you got the update from that family, or at the very least, you may have got a telegram if it was like disastrous news. Nowadays, you're constantly switched on, you never switch off. So a few years ago, I went and saw Mo Godart. So Mo Godart, for those of you who don't know who he is, used to be the former chief business officer at Google X. And since then, he has written some incredible books and is a best-selling author. And I went to see him at an event I went to where he was talking about stress specifically. It was following his books, Unstressable. And that conversation he had on stage about stress and the impact it has on our brain and how we function every day really stayed with me. And I had the privilege to have a conversation with him afterwards. And at that time, I was just about starting the research on my book about confidence and leadership habits and things like that. And I asked him at the time that, is there any correlation between how leaders behave in terms of their stress and their confidence? And he was like, yeah, definitely there is. He said he hadn't done the research in it, but from the conversations he had done, he could definitely see a link. So that got me thinking about how we can talk about stress and confidence, because you can't talk about one without the other, in my opinion, because when you're stressed, your energy depletes. And when your energy depletes, as I said to you at the start, it can really impact how you show up for yourself. And I see it all the time. When someone starts feeling a bit tired, their performance starts dipping a little bit. And then when the performance starts dipping, the self-doubt starts to creep in. So then they start overcompensating and start working longer hours and staying up at night to prove themselves, which only then increases their stress and exhausts them further. It's a vicious cycle. And it's really sneaky because it doesn't just make you tired. It actually changes how your brain works. So when stress becomes chronic, your system flips into survival mode. Cortisol and adrenaline floods in. It preps you from running away from danger. And that's useful if a tiger is chasing you, like in the old days, but it's not so useful when you're leading a team meeting or you've got to manage a big project or you've got a big presentation to deliver and you're stuck in this survival mode. In survival mode, our brain changes how it operates. The prefrontal cortex that I mentioned before helps us strategize, regulate our emotions, and think the big picture. That becomes less active and can even lose like volume under long-term stress, which is quite scary when you really think about what the impact it has on our physical ability, not only our mental ability. Whereas there are parts of our brain that signals when things become more risky, it becomes more sensitive. Even that can grow. Our sensitivities can grow more. And that's the amygdala. The amygdala's job is to scan for threats and to keep us safe. It hasn't changed from our ancestor days when they used to live in caves and, hunt for food. But when the amygdala is balanced, it works really well. But when it's under constant stress, it goes into overdrive and it reacts to everyday challenges as if it was seriously dangerous. So you're constantly living in that like stress life. Your heart's slightly elevated. Everything feels a lot. So like a meeting or a conversation can feel like a saber-toothed tiger is actually chasing you down. And Mo spoke about emails as our saber-toothed tiger, that kind of constant pinging that we feel coming our way all of the time. And we just can't get on top of our work. It can genuinely feel like something is chasing us and we just can't get over it. And if you're kind of feeling quite reactive to what I'm saying, you may be in that space right now. And one thing I do want to share with you is that it is manageable and we can manage it. The trick in all of this that I've spoken to you about today is about catching it as early as you possibly can, before stress can drain your energy and hijack how you come across and your confidence and your self-esteem. That is really important. So I'm going to share with you a framework, because I love a framework if you listen to my previous episodes, and this is called the Fuel Framework. And the Fuel Framework helps us understand how to protect our energy while working and leading effectively, because we still want to do our best work. In my coaching, I've noticed that leaders who sustain the energy and their confidence do have one thing in common. They don't leave things to chance. They protect it with intention. They don't go, oh, I've got a weekend break coming up, so I'm sure I'll be fine by then. They will protect it. They'll be very intentional. And that's what the Fuel Framework is here to help you understand. It's a real simple way to check in with yourself and to keep your energy reserves fairly steady. So F in Fuel stands for focusing on your decision-making capacity. Our brain makes thousands of micro decisions every single day. So it's essential we protect our energy for the decisions that genuinely matter. So this is where saying no is coming in. And I know it's really difficult to say no, but saying no respectfully is one of the hardest but most powerful habits we can develop in ourselves. And I know it goes against much of what workplaces reward, like always being available, always picking up extra work. And obviously discretionary effort is something that helps us build loyalty, connection, and support. But you have to remember that you don't have to say yes to everything to show your value and worth. It is okay to say no to things that don't align to your objectives, that don't deliver value, and isn't part of the work that you do. It's not about being difficult at all. It's about being intentional. So try things like time blocking your calendar for focused work or breaks and stick to it like you would a really important meeting. You'll be quite surprised actually at how quickly others start respecting your boundaries when you start modeling them yourself. And also have a look at your to-do list. Be very conscious about what you are doing on a day-to-day, because if you don't know where your time is going in the day, things are going to be a bit difficult. So look at the Eisenhower matrix. I love that matrix. I'm going to link it in my show notes so you can access it yourself. But on that Eisenhower matrix, there's things that you have to do, things that you need to delegate, things that you need to delay, and things that you need to really think about before you do them. And it is a really good tool to help you understand what you should be working on and what you shouldn't be working on, and then reserving those core decisions to some of those most important tasks. U in the framework stands for understanding your unique energy patterns. Not everyone is going to recharge in the same way. Some people will thrive on being with lots of different people and that social buzz, and some people will need a quiet space to recharge, reflect, and re-energize. How you reclaim your energy is as individual as your fingerprint. And I've worked with leaders who kept pushing themselves to be always on because that's what their boss modeled. Like their bosses or their leaders were like getting the energy from other people around them. But for them, it was draining them. So by tracking your energy and understanding where you are your sharpest during the day and where you are not your sharpest during the day, and scheduling your stuff accordingly will really help you. So the number one tip I will share for this is keeping an energy log for 1 week. So rate your energy levels from 1 to 10 at 3 points each day: morning, midday, and end of the day. Note what activities, people, situations, environments precede your highest and lowest ratings, because you'll start to see patterns that help you schedule those energy-giving activities when you need them the most. E in fuel stands for enforcing self-compassion. When things go wrong, our first instinct is often to berate ourselves and be quite mean, and this consumes a lot of our energy. But self-compassion is a secret weapon for many of the confident leaders I have worked with and have interviewed. And it's not about letting yourself off the hook or lowering your standards or not taking accountability, but it's about recognizing that mistakes and setbacks are part of the process. They're part of the process. Failure is part of who we are. And if you are constantly beating yourself up over a mistake, I want you to ask yourself, would I speak to a friend like this? My guess is that you are going to be much kinder to your friend than you are to yourself. In fact, generally, we're much kinder to other people than we are to ourselves. And the thing is that failing is an opportunity to learn and be better next time. And that's the way I look at failure. I don't look at failure as getting things wrong. I look at failure as, what can I do better next time? Where do I need to apologize? What do I need to learn from this? Failure in the true sense is if you fail without learning anything, that is what failure is. So be very kind of considerate to yourself, practice self-compassion. Don't give yourself too much of a hard time, because that can really take away your energy. You can't sleep at night. You're a bit snappy with people. Your mind is whirring. You wish you did something a bit differently. That is not going to help you with your energy. So address it. Make sure that you take action, you are intentional, you take accountability, and then learn from it and move on. Final part of fuel, which links into that kind of self-compassion, is being able to lead with sustainable energy. The people around you have a massive impact on your energy. So they're either going to be lifting you up and leaving you feeling energized, or they're going to be leaving you feeling quite drained. I want you to focus on the ones who top up your energy. So whether that's a mentor who champions you, a peer who gets what you're going through, or a friend who reminds you to take a break occasionally. People in your learning circle that I've spoken about before, those are your energy feeders. And when you model sustainable energy practices, like having a learning circle that you listen to and they help you out, or leaving at a reasonable time at work, or taking proper breaks, you're actually giving the people around you and your team, if you manage a team, the permission to do the same. And I've seen this happen repeatedly with leaders. When a leader sets a boundary and communicates it clearly, within weeks, the whole team starts respecting each other's boundary. And there is that thing about walking the walk and talking the talk and leading by example. It does make a difference. Productivity doesn't drop in these situations. It actually helps people bring their best selves into work. So have a look at who is in your circle, who leaves you energized after a conversation and who leaves you feeling a bit flat. So before I end this episode, I want to leave you with a few questions to sit with. I want you to think about, when was the last time you felt truly energized at work, and what were the conditions or the people that created that for you? I also want you to think about what's draining your energy right now. What's that one small boundary that you could set to help you not have your energy drained? Have a think about what that looks like for you. And also, how does your energy, if you're a leader, a line manager, or people manager, or you're managing projects, how does your energy affect your team's confidence and performance? And the most important one I want you to really think about is, are you waiting for permission to rest, or are you taking control of your own recovery? Just being intentional and understanding how your energy is being distributed on a day-to-day basis. And when you look at your energy, I guarantee the rest of your habits and the rest of how you feel, your self-esteem, your confidence, your self-value will shift. Energy isn't optional for confident leadership. It is foundational in the work that we do. We can't lead from empty, and we can't model resilience while we're running ourselves into the ground. And we also can't expect our people, our team, our families to thrive if we're barely surviving in this as well. So protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's a strategic move, and it's intentional. And it's how you show up as your best self and how you help others show up as their best selves, time and time again. So please, if you don't do anything from all the other episodes, then this episode, please pay attention to your energy, how you're feeling, what you're doing, and be very intentional with how you are showing up for yourselves. Thank you, as always, for listening. Take care of yourself. I will be back next Monday, where I'll be talking about charisma and competence. Let me know, as usual, what you thought of this episode. Please review it on wherever you listen to your podcast episodes. It makes such a difference. And please do feel free to share this episode if you think it's going to help someone in your life, a friend, a family member, a colleague. If you think it's going to help them and this conversation was useful, I would really appreciate that share. Word of mouth shares go really far for small podcasters like me, so I would really appreciate you taking a little bit of time and just forwarding on the episode if you think it's going to help somebody in your life. And of course, if you have somebody that you would like to recommend as a guest for future episodes, or even if you want to be a guest yourself, then drop me a note to advita@decodingconfidence.com, or you can DM me on any of my social channels as well. Take care of yourself, and I will see you next week.